Good morning and welcome back. This is Daybreak. This Wednesday morning is the 21st day of November 2018. Thank you for staying with us. We want to take a look at what's happening in the papers, and my guests are here with me today. We have Didmus Barasa, Kimilili MP, Gladys Wanga, who's the Women Rep, Homa Bay County. Thank you both for joining us. We're still expecting Gladys Barasa. Once she gets here, we will have her join our panel. So obviously in the front, on the front pages of both papers, it's still talking about KCP, you know, the results that are out. Didmus, what do you think of... we're just talking about this headline, Born to Shine, in the Daily Nation, the front page. It's a beautiful story. I mean, you know, the girl has really defied the odds in Kibra. We had the story as well in our news bulletin last night. But then again, the pressure continues to pile with a headline like this. What do you think?
I think what Kenyans need to understand is that people do not shine from the same platforms. Mm-hmm. We shine from different platforms. And I think what is important is that for people to know, and I will want also the Minister of Education to recognize that we have the people who drive the innovations of the country. These are the top brilliant people. And also we have the managers of the drivers of the of innovation. You know, like you go into the sector, you found that the chief chemists, you know, these are the chief engineers. Yeah. These are people who really excelled in Form 4 in KCPE. But then we have the average Kenyans who went to either through the, you know, they did some diploma in administration, did some Bachelor of Administrations. Now they are managing them in terms of planning and prioritizing what needs to be done. So you cannot really shine from the same platform. So these issues of saying that Born to Shine, we have other people who are also shining in garages elsewhere. Right. They can fix your car, you know. So this is something that the Kenyans needs to stop. Yeah,
and makes one wonder what happens to, you know, those who didn't get the 200. I mean, even for parents, it's pressure, isn't it? You're thinking, my child was not born to shine. Gladys? Sorry.
She's boss.
Yes.
For the purposes of this show?
Yes, for the purposes of this show. So, I mean, let's have that. So I said Gladys turned to her, and then it occurred to me there's Gladys as well. Gladys Barasa, thank you very much.
Good morning.
Good morning, Western Gishu County Women Rep. So, yes, Gladys and Boss.
Yes.
For the purposes of differentiation. So, what is this time like for parents? I mean, I know the Cabinet Secretary has said that everyone is going to go through to the next level. This is a transition phase, basically. But, you know, the pressure still seems to be on.
Yeah, I think pressure is on parents always to see that their children shine, especially through the Kenyan system where academic excellence is where a lot of success is pegged on. And then you see, I mean, I really admire Gloria. I think her story is inspirational. Right. I think her circumstances and where she has come from and what she has managed to achieve, she deserves a pat on the back, and her story deserves to be highlighted as an encouragement to other girls in similar circumstances, girls and boys, and who are just about to give up and say, I live in Kibra or I am wherever, or I live in the deep down villages of Homa Bay or was in Gishu or somewhere where I could never make it. I don't have parents. So her story is good, but I think as we keep glorifying, you know, academic excellence only, we sort of discourage you know, the others who, because not everybody can make this kind of marks in the exams. So I think we need to find a way of as well also showcasing and bringing up those who excel in other areas, you know, whether they excel in
academic.
Exactly, in arts, in sports. You know, our children who excel in other areas must also find a way of coming up to the top. But Yvonne, allow me to congratulate Homa Bay County, the candidates there, because they were the top in the whole of the Nyanza region. So I really want to congratulate them for a job well done. Yeah,
even as we do that. Boss, where are we now? I mean, we're talking about moving towards a competence-based curriculum that takes a look at a lot more than just this grade. Are we there yet?
Okay. First, I'll start by saying I'll congratulate Gloria.
Yes.
I know the kids at Kibera School for Girls personally.
Yeah.
I've been blessed. They have spent time at my home.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited about this. And I'm also proud of all the candidates, those in Wasingishu that have been to their schools, visited them before the exams, encouraging them, because this is a step in their life. But I know that every time I spoke to young people, I always told them that this is not everything in life. I told them I was never an A student. I was actually just a hardworking student. But I didn't do well in my KCPE, but I continued struggling. Eventually, I became an A student, and I found my niche along the way. So I always encourage young people that it's not the end of the world if you don't succeed, if you don't get the top grades. But if you do, we commend that. And recently in Wasingishu, I held an art exhibition. Reason being, I realized that there were so many young, talented people who never had a chance to showcase their work. And we were very amazed at how many talented people there were in Wasingishu County. I'm sure if the same was done in any other county, you will find that. And now we found that many of them now are able to sell their art. They've now realized this is something they can earn an income from. We have been able to have people approach us to say that we'd like to train these young people, take them for to improve the work that they're doing with their hands, those who are doing carpentry and so on. And so I have seen the progress, and that to your question now about are we there yet? I think the development of the technical and vocational training institutes around the country now is a very big step, because young people who thought that their talent had counted for nothing now know that they have a place to go. We are also able to tap in people who have probably been learnt on the job with their hands and without any formal education or training, and therefore have no certification, so that even if they wanted to bid for work, they would not be able to get it. If they wanted to be a welder for some project or tender, they would not be able to get it.
Apprenticeship needs to count for something.
Yes, now the TVETs actually are now, can take you, and they test your competency, and they are able to certify you. And we actually have the ambassador for the TVETs, for what they call industry-based training, is a child of Wasingishu County, Mr. Deepen But and he had the same experience. He could not get into school, regular school, and his parents thought he was a failure. But eventually, when he went into a technical school, he ended up excelling, runs a very successful garage in Wasingishu, and is now the ambassador, and I'm glad that the ministry recognized him. So he's now the link between those people who have the skills and the industry, so that we make sure that and I believe that if Kenya says they want to industrialize, you cannot industrialize without skilled labor.
Absolutely.
So I'm glad that, yes, for those who can make it in academics, let's encourage them. But those who cannot, we must tell them all is not lost, and let us be able to give them to have a chance to build on their talent.
Absolutely. And I guess the other issue that came up with this examination was the teenage pregnancies. Page 4 of the Standard has that. There's a little article there saying ending teenage pregnancies would be hard, and it's talking about the TSC that has sacked some 342 teachers over the last 3 years. You know, just raising some serious questions about that, and that these teachers have been banned from teaching in any other school in the country.
They should be banned from earth.
And perhaps prosecuted as well, because this is not just about, you know, some headlines call it having sex with teenagers. Well, it's really
a crime.
Rape. Because below the age of 18, we know, and 16, you know, the whole consent issue comes up. But how do we solve this issue, Didmus? You know, we have a task force that is going to look into it. I mean, isn't it as simple as if you are found culpable, especially if you're an adult above 18, you face the full force of the law? I mean, you know, what is this? It's a societal thing, but we're having a task force, we have laws in place, but still we're here?
I happen to work with the Teachers Service Commission at the Secretariat at one point, and I want to tell you that we have a lot of teachers who are interdicted on similar circumstances. Coming back to how Teacher Service Commission in form of compensation. So as a person, I don't really think that you know, interdicting them is going to solve this problem. That's why we've always seen every time we have teachers who impregnate their pupils and students. The numbers are so many. The numbers that we are seeing are only for those that were captured from the girls that were sitting for their exams. I think the law provides for what should be done to a person who indulges in sex with a girl who is below, a girl or a boy who is below 18 years. And we need also to see statistics of how many of such beasts are being sent to prison. That's the only way that is going to make these people respect the law, because we have enough laws to punish them. The only challenge has been that because of poverty, these teachers will compromise the parents so that they're not coming out to testify in courts. Some even do not even report. Others, I'm told, they go ahead and marry these young girls. So we really need to step up. The government needs to do a little bit more. You know, what they are doing in interdicting is a deterrence measure. But we need a punitive
there needs to be a next
measure.
step
Absolutely.
thereafter. Yeah, because interdicting was only ever a transitory process, isn't
Absolutely.
it?
Yeah.
They're interdicted, and then investigations take place, and then charged, and a case takes place. But then there's also the very controversial question about comprehensive sex education for young children that then comes up when we talk about this, and everybody gets a little agitated when this discussion happens. Gladys, where do we? Is that part of the solution?
Yeah, there are a number of things. One, I wanted to weigh in on the issue of the competency-based curricula, which I think is a step in the right direction. By the time the students who started, like the ones who are in class 1, 2, 3 now, do their exam in, in the number of years, 8 years or 6 or 7 years or 6 years from now, I think they will be tested on a wide range of things. My daughter is in class 3, and when they started the competency-based, like their holiday homework is no longer just sitting on the table. Right. They said, can you take her pictures? When she's planting a tree, can she go and take photos at the park, at the national park? So this is a broader sort of curriculum, and I think when we get there, it's going to be more inclusive. When you pass your exams and get very high marks or whatever it is, it's not going to be because you are a bookworm or you read the books. It's going to be more comprehensive. And then I want to take issue with this headline, Ending Teenage Pregnancy Hard. This is the most lazy headline I have seen. I mean, I have read the story. Yes. There's nothing in that story that says ending teenage pregnancy is hard. This is just, we need the media on board for us to deal with this issue of teenage pregnancies. And coming back on the issue of, interdictions and so on, I think it is just one part of the game, of a very complex problem that we are facing. Why is it complex? It's complex because, we have families involved in this thing. It's an intricate process. There's a time a mother asked somebody who was really, really actively following up a teacher who had sexually assaulted her daughter, and somebody took it up and was following it up thoroughly, and then the mother asked that person, why are you so much into this thing? Don't you want my child to also give birth with a bright person like a teacher, Wow. So you're dealing with a setup that is too complicated. It's not a straightforward matter because parents collude. So you want to, as a politician, say you want to follow it up and get it to the very end, but parents collude with the offenders, and when you go there now, you're intruding in the process. So we need a comprehensive, and I've raised a question on this matter, and I hope this week or next week the ministry is going to be responding as to how we can jointly really resolve this. And then comes the question of comprehensive sex education. Sometimes, the moral police, our churches, and other, people like Ezekiel Mutwa or others, they'll come in and say, let us not expose our children to sex material or sex education. But these children know.
Probably a lot more than you think.
I mean, right now in this age of internet and so on, they know so much. We must take the bull by its horns. We must introduce sex education. And as parents, we must also talk to our children about these matters. And it's not
Yeah.
You can't take it for granted that parents will, because my daughter is 8, she's going to turn 9. And more, I want to be able to talk to her about sex and sexuality.
Right.
But it's not an easy subject to broach. Sure. So we need to also talk to parents as to how they broach the subject, how they come to a point of having a free and open discussion.
Yeah, because, you know, even as we talk about what's happening, you know, sex education in schools, the ministry is saying parents have failed their children. Have parents failed their children, boss? And should this conversation be something that's happening, as difficult as Gladys says it is, and I imagine it would be, but just to have age-appropriate discussions with...
I think it's something that where all of us in society have to take responsibility. Both the Ministry of Education, as mothers, we must also take responsibility. But what we can do is begin to have a conversation about it. As long as we still hush the topic, then it becomes more difficult. Sometimes I've been happy to see that there have been books produced, which is a simple book but teaches children to say this is inappropriate touch. This should not happen. Because I believe the only way to stop these predators is to make sure that our children are able to detect that this is sexual assault.
Right. And when it happens, to speak up about it.
So if we empower, in fact, for me that would be the first point of call, that we make them capable of being able to detect it. And remember that this abuse happens mostly with the people closest to them. So they need to begin to be trained to be on high alert with even those people close around them. Yeah. And for parents also to begin that you can't take it for granted when you leave your daughter with an uncle. Just because they're an uncle doesn't mean that they can't turn into a beast. So the empowering the children should be, I think the schools start the conversation, the parents will pick it up, the media, talk about it. Let's not make it taboo anymore. Because the moment everyone is talking about it and knows it, it's going to be very difficult because everyone will know that this child, if I touch them, they will be held to pay, going to report. They will but report also make it easier to explain to children who can they report to. Because I think also the challenge, where those children who are lucky enough to be able to know that this is what is happening and it is wrong, then they are stuck as to where
to go for help.
To go for help. So we must also make sure that places where they can go to help is very near them. And probably the places to be able to report it can even be within the schools, because we know all kids go to school. You don't expect a child to go to a police station.
Right, yes.
You don't expect a child to be able to tell their parent, who will then go to the police station. So we must station, I've always believed that we must have a person in the school who children can approach. We must make it that it's possible for children to be able to write an anonymous, tell the story and put it in a box in there within schools. So we have to be very pragmatic in the way that we address this issue. But we have to definitely stop pretending that sexuality is something that is not part of our lives.
It's taboo? Is it still taboo?
I think there's different school of thoughts. We have some that says children are usually, the developing brains of a child are usually like they are on a discovery lane. They want to discover what lies beyond a certain mountains, beyond certain things. And when you begin introducing them, telling them about something that they don't do it, that's exactly what they would do. They really want to, they really want to have a taste of what is this that they are saying I should not do.
That's forbidden,
I see it even in my own house. You know, I drink wine. And when I'm having a bottle of wine in my hand, they ask me, Daddy, what are you drinking? I say, this is the stuff that are taken by people with beards only. And I give him a soda, Fanta. Then I see him saying, no, Daddy, I also want to drink this. So at times when you tell them not to do this, that's when they want now to experiment. So it is something that that curriculum must be properly developed. You don't just know the approach is what makes the difference. So, I say that as we are speaking now in this country, because we have no such knowledge on how to introduce sex education for our children, I would advise that we don't do it unless we have a clear way of doing it. Let me tell you, for example, we have psychologists that will counsel people. Not everybody has the skills of counseling a person.
Yeah.
And if we are saying so, then also in terms of introducing sex education, we need to have a clear approach on how this can be done.
A clear approach. I'd like you to hold that thought for just a moment. I'd like to bring our viewers up to date with some news that's just coming in. You've seen the breaking news banner flashing across your screen. This morning, police are looking for gunmen who kidnapped a tourist from her hotel room in Chakama town. This is in Magarini West in Kilifi County. News just in is that police are looking for gunmen who kidnapped a tourist from her hotel room in Chakama town in Magarini West in Kilifi County. The tourist is an Italian woman. She was kidnapped last night in an incident that left at least 5 people injured. The Italian woman was kidnapped last night, and among the injured during that incident is a woman and a 10-year-old boy. I'll take you through that again. Police this morning looking for gunmen who kidnapped a tourist from her hotel room in Chakama town, Magarini West, Kilifi County. The woman who was kidnapped is Italian. She was kidnapped last night. That incident left at least 5 injured, including a woman and a 10-year-old boy. We'll continue to update you as we get more news on this. That's about kidnapping of a tourist in Kilifi County that happened last night. An Italian woman. Police are searching for the gunman. 5 people were injured during that incident. Stay with us here on Daybreak, and we'll continue to give you the very latest on that incident as it takes place. We carry on with our press review. You were talking about the approach, how we do it. Boss, you wanted to...
Yes, I'm hoping that, I'm not too sure what I heard about what the Ministry of Education does.
Yeah.
We do not want to have more research done on this topic, or a commission of inquiry, or another committee, or a task force. We do not need a task force. All we need is to assemble experts to tell us how best to take preventive measures, which is education. So if we say we're going to educate the children on this, what kind of curriculum do we need to produce? What kind of books? What kind of conversation? Which even parents who may not have the expertise will be able to benefit. We can employ at home.
Okay.
So I want to see more practical solutions being given to us, but having a task force going around the country, we already know the problem. We already know what has exactly happened.
But why is it that when we think, boss, that we're having sex education, that it is, I mean, for lack of a better phrase, the how to do it,
I think
as opposed to, learning more about one's sexuality. This is who we are. These are our bodies. I think every time you have that conversation, people think that.
I think we need to get maybe a different word to use.
Right.
Because, for example, teaching a girl that you must never be alone with a man when you go out, stay in a public place, be all of you with all the friends, the 20 of you, but never go on the side alone with him, because that is, you're teaching them a skill. It's still part of sex education. When you get to a certain
age, there's certain parts of your body that are not necessarily...
And then you need to also tell them how their body reacts, how the bodies of the boys around them will react. And so you tell them, you've got to be careful. You can't hang out with them the way you used to when you were 5 years old and so on. So you have to empower them to know what is happening to their bodies and the responses that can come out of that, and that the consequences of doing that. So if they understand the consequences, basic things, telling kids do not speak to strangers, do not take sweets from strangers, do not agree to a company. That is still part of the whole sex education realm. It's actually just a preventive measure. So I think we begin to think that using that, so it's, I think I think probably the use of the word of sex education has made people almost shun it. So I'm hoping the task force can find all of these. So I'm hoping that the task force can come up even with a way to make it an all-encompassing name, so that people know that it covers the whole realm of just your own life skill of how to protect yourself and your body as a woman and as a boy.
I think before you go to Gladys, because these are mothers, they understand these things much more better. I think...
Do they?
Yes, they are mothers.
We'll accept the credit.
I think where we need to begin from, we need to begin with ourselves who are adults, where we avoid, because the young people will learn from us. we avoid what we call in English public display of affection, because it begins with these children imitating what they have seen their parents or their bigger brothers do. That's where all these things begins from.
Can I throw a spanner in the works? Yeah. So if public displays of affection, sort of show children that it is okay to do it, why do you take wine in front of your son?
I hide, but when he tries to come in, I try as much as possible. I tell him this is soda, this is something.
Well, isn't that the same?
I no longer, but you see,
but whatever you see here happens for adults. Yeah. I mean, you said
that's why
that when you have wine, but you tell him this is not for you, you have the soda. But do you think public displays of affection necessarily lead to higher sexuality?
There is some levels. Like I tell you, where I grew up, and I even never knew that my mother or my father goes for a short call, because where we come from, these people latrines were somewhere in some coffee plantation, and you will never see them go there. I've never imagined that my parents did what they were doing.
Is public displays, are public displays of affection a really big thing in this country? I mean, I'm not sure I walk around the streets of Nairobi and see people hugging and kissing, and
it's not like you walk on the streets of Europe or America.
Yeah, Europe is a whole other matter altogether.
Just walk almost like.
Let me tell you what I mean. Let me tell you what I mean. I watched some news on TV of a father who went to a hotel room with a young boy, and with the woman who was not the mother of that child, until he was busted by the mother. These are things that I'm talking about that are completely very wrong. When you are seducing a woman or seducing somebody, don't do it in front of your son or your daughter. Pardon?
Is that prevalent?
I think there are unique cases where that happens. For example, I think there are few. I read that story of a parent who actually went with their child and went into a lodging somewhere. But I think that is the exception rather than the norm. I think the issue of PDA or public displays of affection in this country is not as big an issue. But I just want to weigh in and say, I think the most important thing is to empower our children. Let's empower them. Like Honorable Bose said, let them know, because even if it's not happening on the streets, all these soap operas, even cartoons these days, people are even the cartoons themselves are kissing. So it's a matter where you cannot control what your child will see. You can only control what they know on how to deal with it. So I think that is the most important thing. Give them information, talk to them, and that has to be from parents to teachers. And that's why I want to say, whether you change the name or not, for me, comprehensive sex education or sexuality or whatever we call it, we must just call a spade a spade. We must, or family, let's just call a spade though. Let's not hide behind, pretty names
and the euphemisms,
and so on. But what I wanted
part of the education is actually, just to finish with what Gladys is saying, part of the education is actually teaching them even which sites not to visit, etc. And you explain to them that these sites do exist, but what they can do to your mind is the following. Then that child will know. It's like telling them, don't go to that place because you'll fall over that cliff. So we empower them about pornography, we empower them about all these sites that play with their minds and so on. If we are able, so that's why I'm saying the education has to be all-encompassing. So let's not have a task force, let's just have the process of
and what I wanted to say to finish that point was, our parents don't know these things. Because many of us have just grown up, kimungu mungu hivi, and then you're there, because our parents also did not talk to us about
the dangers didn't exist as much as
now. But then, the thing is, right now, when parents come for PTA meetings or school meetings, shouldn't the schools introduce someone who talks to the parents about how to talk to your children, so that parents, like I go to my child's, annual something. I would appreciate if someone came there, to facilitate a session
to broach the conversation with your children.
Yes, this is how you talk to your children. This is how you tell them. This is what is appropriate for a 10-year-old. This is what is appropriate for a 15-year-old. And then when I go back home, now I'm empowered. And if this was done across our schools, across the country, parents would then take in their role. And then the teachers also play their role. And then everybody plays their role, and we probably will be better.
I'm seeing, even from this conversation, we can even tell why this problem is not about to end. Because of these Western cultures, where we are saying PDA is no longer an issue. Why is it that when we were growing up, these early pregnancies were not common? And at that time, you remember from our own community, they were saying that when you had a baby before you get married, your bride price goes down. And the people were really keen into getting pregnant when they are home. Look at, for example, the Muslim communities. That's the only area where you get even a girl of about 25 is still a virgin because of their cultural belief and the religious beliefs. So I think even, you've seen even some, at one point in Uganda, even they were banning the issues of miniskirts, how people dresses, you know. So these are some of the things that contributes. And we should move away from this boardroom and the theoretical discussions and researches as how we can end these early pregnancies and begin to develop the practical approach that can be embraced by everyone.
And the practical approach, in your view, would be to ban Western cultures?
Like this, some Western cultures that promotes this, early pregnancies. For example, when I'm watching some TVs, I see some warning coming up that this program is has some elements that are not fit for children and parental guidance, or not for children, not at all. So these are things which the disclaimers that should be able to come forward. So we should also put disclaimers on. On what?
So disclaimers on television, and how, like practically, how do you ban Western cultures? Because we live in a global community. Your children will probably visit a European country at any point.
You know, Waheshimiwa would tell you.
I'm just asking because you're talking about practical solutions. Yeah. Okay, fine.
Absolutely.
Having a disclaimer as
let me give you an example.
Yeah. How do you ban this culture from, as you call it?
We have some companies that has even dress code. Waheshimiwa will tell you, if you are coming to see me in my office in Continental House and you are dressed in some manner, the security will allow you to come in. So that's why I'm saying that we need also to provide regulations that are going to regulate these Western cultures. For example, I don't think it is allowed in this country to marry a person of the same sex, but it happens elsewhere.
I think we're mixing issues now.
No, I'm just telling you that what is happening, what is happening in Western countries, we need not to copy all that is happening there. We need not to import everything because it's being done in Europe. So you're saying we should
legislate? I'm having a hard time understanding how you legislate this.
I think I can help him here. You know, legislation can only go so far. Just the way you can never legislate people to heaven. You cannot. You can only preach to them and hopefully convert them to go to heaven.
The same way we're saying there are laws against sexual abuse of underage, but it still happens.
So what we must tell ourselves, the reality is, all this modern culture, every child has access to it. If it's not from their phone, if they don't have a phone, a friend has a phone.
Their parents have phones.
The reality is they are exposed to it. So we must ask ourselves, how do we mitigate the damage should they get exposed to it? Or how do we mitigate their ability to access the damaging information? And I think that's why it has to go to personal education. Because you cannot say, that even if you put a law, we have many laws, but and you cannot legislate on personal issues,
on moral issues.
I'm not saying you bring laws. For example, in my house, I have put some firewall. I have internet in my house. I have put some firewall. You cannot just download anything in my house. There are some churches you cannot go there when you are dressed in a particular manner. So I'm just saying it's a practice that we can begin to practice, and then we'll move forward. And I think you see, when a society is comfortable with a particular way of doing things, then it becomes whatever is being done. It becomes.
Does that begin in the home, Mheshimiwa, where you start to have the conversation with your children about what you deem is fit for your sons and daughters, which is, I think, what we're all talking about here, about having these conversations at the home. And the reason I asked you when you said, the mothers are probably more knowledgeable on this issue, as opposed to the fathers.
And the dress code is not about even legislating. The dress code starts at home. I mean, I've had teenagers grow up in my house, and I have young children. And I mean, the first things I would tell my daughter, and she'd dress in a sari, I say, you look beautiful,
absolutely,
Mama. But if you dress like that, you think you're just dressing up because you like the way that dress looks. But there are other people who will interpret it differently, that you're trying to flaunt yourself, or, you know, and so on. So when you begin to empower them on how the other people view them, so that you don't have to reach the stage.
And shouldn't that be a personal decision? So that in your household, you say, in my household,
but explain Barasa, why.
This is what I'm
don't
doing.
Prevent,
this is why. This is,
that's
you know,
fine.
these are the values.
That's fine, I agree.
So we're talking about, you know, having a value system.
Yes.
But it's not something that you can regulate.
No,
I agree with you. That's why I said when you see people engaging in PDA and you are with the children, you tell them, of course, they will ask you, those are bad people, you know, so that they don't copy.
They're bad people?
They begin to do,
they're
to do
bad
it in
people,
their
or what they're
homes.
doing is not what you deem acceptable.
You know, when you are telling...
the value system...
All right, let's hear from
the value system must be built from the family unit. Everybody must tell their children or people within their household what they expect, and it might not be what the neighbor says. And once the neighbor might be more liberal, and somebody else might be more conservative, depending on their values. That doesn't mean the other person is wrong and this person is right. I think what we as parents will be looking at is how our children, you know, grow up to achieve their best, and how we deal with issues such as teenage pregnancies, and how we mitigate those kinds of HIV issues and so on. But this cannot be a matter we address in Parliament. For example, how?
You know, I never said...
You cannot legislate morality. You will fail flat, because these children have grown up from day one. They know what they are supposed to do according to what they have been.
It also happens in private. More things happen in private, so it's hard to legislate.
So I think for me, the key is in empowering parents, families, and families intervening. The day the families will intervene more, parents will intervene more with their children, we will deal with these things. Once a child leaves their house with information, the teacher just has to add, you know, and once the teacher adds, you know, your child will always come back home and tell you, Mommy, teacher said A, B, C, D. Then you will say, I agree with that.
So creating the home as a safe space for where your children can come and say, I have seen this, I've experienced this, is this, and then you create that sort of...
But parents are too busy. I think we can't run away from that conversation. We're all too busy out there doing everything else to make money, to make sure our children, you know, but then at the time you come back with that money, you will find your child is already in a different situation.
I think the people who should be trained most are house girls. You find out that very many children will grow up in the hands of the house girl, and you know, because the mother is busy, the father is busy elsewhere. We also need to come out with also some curriculum of training these house girls as well.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, it's a reality that
it is.
We have to deal with, that we're not always as available as we would like to be. Ladies and gentlemen, stay with me. We want to take a break, but first I want to just give our viewers an update of that story we broke a little earlier on about a tourist kidnapping situation in Kilifi. Actually, it's in Malindi sub-county. So let me just give you some of those details once again. Police looking for gunmen who kidnapped a tourist from her hotel in Chakama town. It's in Malindi sub-county. The Inspector General of Police is this morning giving details about this incident that took place last night. He says an Italian woman was kidnapped last night. In that incident, it left 5 people injured. The kidnapped Italian, we can now confirm, has been identified as Silvia Constanza. She's aged 23 and she works for an NGO operating in the area. She works as a volunteer. 5 people were injured in that incident in which she was taken last night. All the 5 are said to be locals who were shot by the gunmen as they fled the scene. Among those who were injured, a 10-year-old boy who was shot in the eye. It's breaking news that we have for you again. We're getting further details from the Inspector General's office, informing us of the identity of the Italian woman who was kidnapped last night in Malindi sub-county. She has been identified as Silvia Constanza. She's 23 and she's a volunteer for an NGO in the area. 5 people were injured as the gunmen fled the scene while kidnapping the woman. Amongst those injured, a 10-year-old boy who was shot in the eye. More details as we continue to get them here on Daybreak.